You ready to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Okay. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have as my guest today, Mallorie Buoy. Mallorie, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
Awesome. So for the past 17 years, Mallorie has studied psychology, education, yoga, mysticism and philosophy, and movement education, amongst other subjects. She spent more than 1,000 hours studying in the Himalayas and many more in the study of quantum and direct application of this knowledge within her daily life. Yet it took a journey of single and adoptive parenting alongside much experience of and with trauma that catalyzed her deep desire to put all facets of her knowledge and experience together to offer detailed and informed healing practices. She says no more roadblocks because of misguided advice and gas-lighty spiritualisms. Mallorie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Awesome. So before we get going, share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Mm. Yeah. So I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So that is Treaty 6 territory. And right now, talking to you, I'm in Vancouver. My adopted kiddo's birth mom lives here. So I bring her to see her several times a year. Yeah.
Wow, very cool. All
Mhm.
right. So where do we start? Let me start by first saying, so you had asked how we came together, and I found you, discovered you for myself through my own search for looking for guests sometimes, and I was struck by your website. And one of the things you have on your website is you say, "I want you to live the life you most deeply desire," and that really speaks with me. But I offer that as an introduction, as a segue into asking you, how did all this start for you? I mean, your bio is very interesting. It sounds like so many things, but how did this begin for you?
Mm. How I would answer that now with the gift of hindsight is obviously a little bit different than maybe like it started when I was 20, maybe. But with this gift of hindsight, I would say it started when I was really young. Like I had a lot of chronic illness and neurodivergency. And I think that experience of just really deeply longing for a sense of stability and security within my own body catalyzed a search for that when I was quite young, both in what I was studying academically, but then in my interest and draw towards movement and mysticism. And then how I got to where I am now was very much through that journey. Like, so I studied psychology and was a Waldorf school teacher for a long time. And then definitely self-identify as a very curious mystic, understanding what this reality that we exist in is really all about. But then it all came together when I became an adoptive parent. So my foster sister, when I was growing up, I was 11 and she was 3. We're very, very close. And she moved in with me when she was 20.
Your
And
foster sister.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Forgive me.
yeah.
So that means that she was fostered,
My
or you
family was
both were
very
fostered.
close. No, yeah. So
Okay.
good clarification. My mom was her teacher in preschool, and my family became very close to her family and then became her foster family.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when she was 20, she moved in with me and I became her legal guardian and adoptive parent. She's still very close to her birth mom. So I call her my sister, and then her friend who I had known for about 5 years at the time became homeless and he moved in with us as well. And I became his adoptive parent. So they're both adults. And it was through that journey of really understanding, um, they both experienced substance use disorder and the generational trauma. They're both Indigenous, and just being in our family unit, a lot of how I understood the world and my personal research just really took on that lens of how to support them and yeah, be together as a family, how to support them in thriving. And a lot of that was trauma work and trauma study. So I became very interested in and skillful at working with trauma, both in my own body then and with them, and became a clinical somatic educator and therapist.
So, going back to your own experience, you said there was a lot going on. W- w- And there was using hindsight, you said there was, even from a very early age, there was insight into this healing part. What were you trying to heal? Were you even aware of that? What were you doing?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because for so long, and I mean this, if anyone has, done somatic therapy or is a somatic therapist, you'll know that in opening the nervous system, it starts to give you all of this insight of how you felt at such a young age. It's not something that we're necessarily so cognitively aware of or consciously aware of until we experience something else. Does that make sense? So
Mhm.
I I this is another aspect that's really catalyzed my journey, but 4 years ago I was given an MS diagnosis. And so the way that my healing trauma, as well as really deeply understanding functional medicine, has really overlapped. And it's through both of those experiences that I realized that I actually experienced, yeah, just a lot of deep instability within my body and a lot of, I would call it depression, but it is a felt sense of depression that comes from when your body isn't well. So
Mhm.
I was on antibiotics a lot when I was a child, which was common in the 80s and early 90s. And yeah, different things that I can deeply understand, that even as a child, I felt a lot of yeah, sadness and difficulty of just being in the body. And so I think that that experience, amongst others, was like, okay, how do I live in my body well? What does it mean to experience joy? What does it mean to experience connection, stability, a sense of um, like the thread or a baseline of trust in myself and trust in life? And a big part of that, of course, we talk about trauma here, and a big part of that is supporting healing the nervous system. And in my experience, a big part of that was understanding that when the body is healthy and operating well, there is an innate and emergent kind of sense of ease and wellness that I didn't experience for a very long time. So, mhm.
And you mentioned the adoptive experience. How did that catalyze everything? We'll talk about that.
Yeah, that was quite the journey. I'm always a little like, my both of my kiddos have given me permission to speak about their lives because they know that it's really valuable for people to, and feels like reclamation, yeah, an experience of reclamation for them. But they are both Indigenous. They grew up in foster care, and both of their parents and their lineage was a part of the residential school, also residential prison system, sometimes it's called, and the 60s scoop. And that just really deeply lives in their experience. So they have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and substance use disorder, and just a lot of challenges, and schizophrenia, which also I think can be looked at quite differently. I always tell Janie that if this were a few centuries ago, she would probably be the mystic and the healer in her community. But that was an undertaking as well, and it was really catalyzed by love, and just really, it was not an option for them to be houseless, which would have happened. And so in that journey, which was about 7 years long, like I'm still really involved in their lives, but they both now live independently.
Mhm.
But in that 7 year journey, it was just really interwoven with substance use and harm reduction, and being with two people that just have a very, um, a very reasonable need to just express the pain that they feel, and me being kind of the support system in that. And I was, in my young 30s, I'm just going, okay, how do I do this? And it just took a lot of research. But one thing that it really supported in my journey is, like, I was a part of the spiritual community, and I was always deeply inquisitive and always like skeptical. I definitely have a skeptical mind. And so I was curious and skeptical, and being in their lives and creating this kind of unique family unit really siphoned out anything that felt extraneous. Like, if this isn't
Mhm.
applicable in every circumstance, then it doesn't have the substance that I need in this, that I can put trust in it. And it just got right to the heart of what I believe to be true. And I really dove a lot more deeply into the science behind a lot of the spiritual beliefs that I had, and gave me the confidence to now teach mysticism in the way that I do, because I'm so clear to not just say things that don't make sense. Like, I want to get to the whatever questions people have. If,
Mhm.
like, how does it apply in this context, in this context? Like, I've gone there. I've asked those questions. So it really, I think, clarified a lot of the work that I do as well.
So the 7-year experience was your experience trying to adopt these two individuals, or
No, that's they live with me for 7 years.
okay.
And the adoption process was easy because they're adults. The legal guardianship, because they have disability, that was a part of their journey, and that was a bit more of a process, because they need to make sure that there's no one taking advantage of
Sure.
anything else. So that was a little bit more of a legal process, but the adoption process was um, easier because they're adults, and it was by
Okay.
choice to create
Okay.
that
Thanks for
container.
that clarification. So talk to us about this. You get to this point where you're like, okay, I want to start working with people, healing people. Talk to us about that. How did that evolve for you?
Hmm. I think I've had that interest for a very long time. I was, yeah, my first degree was in psychology, so really, curious about that. Then I went on to teach children for 7 years. I was public school and Waldorf school teacher, and I think that was my first, yeah, kind of impulse to really understand that being with people and supporting them, whether they're children or adults, to just like really feel comfortable in their authentic self was really felt in that experience. And then I went on to complete some coursework, most of the coursework, if not all of it, and in a master's in counseling psychology, and then experienced a really profound loss, and so didn't complete the practicum. But I was it was just living in me to work in that way. During that time, I worked primarily with women in healing a lot of trauma, developmental yield trauma, and sexual trauma. And yeah, then being with the family unit that I was creating, just kind of, yeah, it just really refined all of those experiences. And finding somatics was a big part of that, because I was really deeply interested in education and psychology and healing and spirituality. But again, because of my skeptical mind, I was just like constantly searching a little bit. And
Mhm.
somatics is, in my experience and work and opinion, is something that can hold all of that. It's something that really offers a unique new paradigm way of being in the body and being in the world. And so when I found somatics for myself, my family, and then became a somatic experience practitioner and CSE, I the work that I was envisioning just became really clear, and there was a lot more momentum in that, because you can work one on one in supporting trauma, but I also really offer people um, educational experiences to really understand their life, their physiology,
Mhm.
like how all human systems in their own kind of unique individual system can work together. So yeah.
Your experiences, I mean, you obviously and so passionately draw from these incredible and intense experiences, like all these strands of experiences of your life. It feels like you're this vessel, except and maybe we all are, but it just seems so clear that these things, these experiences are coming through you to now help these other people. It's very intense and it's very clear from the things you're saying. So when you're working with people, what is it about, what are you trying to do? Because in your again, going back to that thing on your website, you want to help people like find their live their life. Why is that important? How do you do that?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. It gave me goosebumps. Well, I would say there's many layers. And one, as a somatic therapist, it's really important to just offer that the nervous system can heal, and the depth and capacity and perception of life in a non-chronically activated nervous system, so in a healed nervous system, is so profoundly different. And that's an experience that I just really want to hold for people. And yeah, honestly, as I share that, like all of these kind of experiences of the last many years of folks who have expressed that, including myself, it just kind of came through. And that's just such a profound reality for a lot of the work that I do.
So let
But
me ask you to repeat that.
yeah, just one of the main tenets as a somatic therapist is to hold for all of one's clients that the nervous system can heal, and the system that we exist in supports and creates chronically activated nervous systems. So nervous systems that are chronically in flight, fight, freeze, fawn, and shifting that through slow and intentional somatic work really changes how we experience being in the body, and really changes how we perceive the world
Mm,
and being in the world. And it can support over time an experience of an internal locus of control. So moving through the world from within myself, as opposed to an external, which is like seeking so many different things to validate, like, yeah, I'm here. This is who I
mhm.
am. And that shift is is night and day. Like, it's a profoundly different way of living this life. And so that's one of the main aspects of what I do. But there's a deeper impulse, and that is um so in my, both through experiencing like the family life that I have, like my Janie is like my closest human in this world to me. And there's been a lot of intensity around potential loss, with substance use and risk behavior. And so I was very consistently for 7 years, like approaching this possibility of loss. And also, as you know, missing and murdered Indigenous women is really a risk, especially in the context that support her experience in being in this earth. She really feels community living on the streets, but then there's risk to that. Um, and so in that risk and that reality of potentially losing someone you love very deeply, I was consistently approaching the what does physics tell us about what reality is? What have mystics throughout time and all over the world, whomever it is, what have they told us about this reality? So my interest in understanding what reality is as opposed to what we have been taught it is a big part of what the work that I do. And somatics teaches us that a lot of people use the word somatics to talk about movement or the body.
Mhm.
And that's just one aspect of it. Somatics as a practice tells us that we have been formed through the first 7 years of our lives. And those 7 years inform my beliefs, my expectations, my perceptions, my thoughts, and my daily actions. That is what I embody. Okay. So embodiment is what I do daily. And so many humans are going, what I embody daily doesn't reflect what I value.
Mm,
It doesn't reflect what deeply nourishes me. And we have a hard time then locating, okay, well, what do I value and what is it that I
mhm,
long for? And somatic says we have to actually change our physiology from what we have been taught and therefore practicing daily to what I value and allowing that to be what I practice daily. So an example I often use is this polarity of urgency and ease. So our system teaches us urgency. Our systems are primed to experience urgency in the way of pace and stress and pressure and feeling like everything feels like a threat to our nervous system because of deadline and pace and validation and who am I if I'm not doing and all of those sorts of things. Most people that I work with are like, I want ease. I want to feel at home in my body while I'm going about my day. Why can't I access ease? If that's something I want, why am I not able to like really cultivate that? Because urgency lives so deeply in our psychoneuroimmunoendocrinological system. It's in our physiology. And so somatics is actually the practice of shifting that through a body up approach so that we can actually teach the body ease and then
mm.
actually move through the world in that way. So when I say I want you to live the life that you so deeply long for or desire, I'm saying that there is a practice, there is a paradigm and a practice, and that's what somatics is. It's both a way of viewing the world and also a subset of many, many supportive practices that through that work, you can actually teach your body to embody what you so deeply long for and value.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
As you were describing that, I was thinking, yes, yes, yes. And yet in our culture, I mean, there's an strong argument to be made that our culture doesn't support that. In fact, supports the antithesis of that. Of course, we're all anxious and, you
Mhm.
know, it's, excuse me, it just feels like an uphill battle oftentimes.
Absolutely. And that's something that I really teach. So I teach a 2-year clinical somatic educator and therapist training, and we go through all of this. And a big part of the first 6 months, even, is just really supporting the paradigm shift work. Like it's really difficult to actually embody what we long for because, as you're saying, the system supports the opposite. And so it's really, as you say, like it's an uphill battle. And just yesterday I was sharing with my students that like we often celebrate people when we're noticing momentum or success or some iteration of that, when really in the work that I do, really recognizing how hard it is to first notice, whoa, this is not the shape that I want to embody. This is not the
Mm,
life that I long for. And then take those initial steps and those initial first years to really turn towards what is my nervous system? What is the state of my nervous system? What is my physiology holding? What are my beliefs and definitions about the world? That work is so satiating but difficult. It's so deeply nourishing to look in that way, but it's also very challenging. And I'm like, that's actually the Everest. And we're taught to really celebrate when people get to the top, but even just thinking, oh, I want to climb Everest or I'm at the first base, those are the places that we really want to celebrate as somatic therapists. So mhm.
this is intense. I mean, the way you're talking makes me feel like, you know, you're describing a process that a lot of people don't talk about. This seems like the foundational, the elemental process of like becoming a human being,
Mhm.
becoming our best versions of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, as you say that, like my research continues to discover both through the lens of mysticism, but also science, physiology, psychology, is that what we are taught is a lot of it is actually untrue. And I can get more into that a little bit. But primarily what I'll say is that it's just the tip of the iceberg of what's possible for us as humans. And understanding that we actually exist in a world of possibility, and really teaching people the process, the science behind that from a somatic nervous system perspective, um, is what I, so as I said in the beginning, like, yes, what I primarily do is offer people that, a healed nervous system can change everything, but on a much deeper level, really teaching the cognitive, but also the somatic physiology experience, how to be in the world that is so much more full, like there's so much more possibility and depth and connection that is available than what we are taught and what is emulated on a regular basis.
So, as we kind of wind down here, Mallorie, what do you teach specifically? Or you work with individuals, and I'm looking at your website now. You have specific courses. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I do work one-on-one as a somatic experiencing practitioner. And so that's also on my website. But one of my main, I would say like maybe passion projects, like my main birth into the world is this course called Brain Body Being. It's a 2-year clinical somatic educator and clinical somatic therapy course. And we get into the really the science of spirituality and the deep process of what somatics can offer. And so in the 2 years, folks become really masterful at working one-on-one with clients and their nervous systems, working in the context of movement and healing chronic pain and supporting chronic illness through clinical somatic exercises, and then working a lot in the human systems and paradigmatic work that somatics offers as well.
Wow. So, who is the course for?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually for anyone. We really like, I love when people who are already professionals in the medical profession or movement profession or educational professions come to the course. That's amazing to bring new perspectives there. But truly anyone, we have people who want to take the course primarily for their own learning. We have people who want to make this their new career. And we have folks who want to combine what they're already doing with deeper knowledge as well. So all of the above are welcome.
So the psychophysiology is, to me, kind of unique. I mean, this just isn't somatic education. You're going deeper
Yeah. I
and
mean,
covering other ground.
we cover all, like, as you brought up in the beginning, I want you to live the life that you most deeply desire. In order to do that well, understanding how the way that I move about my world is intersected, is one and the same of what my physiology is primed for and is trained to do, and how to shift that is a really profound process for people. And that's a big part of the work that we do.
Wow, really interesting. All right. So, how can people learn more about you and the courses you offer, Mallorie? It's the best
Yeah,
way.
so you can visit my website, www.homebodyhealing.org. And our Instagram, homebody.healing, is another main aspect of communication that we utilize. We are in the works of starting new projects. So launching a podcast actually in January
Oh,
called
nice.
How to Know Other Worlds. And
Very
I'm going to be
cool.
talking about the intersections of mysticism and somatic work. Yeah. So that will also be on Instagram, homebody.healing, but you can find that. Yeah, those are the primary ways.
Okay. We'll have those linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Mallorie, you're intense in a beautiful way. I mean, I love it. It's like amazing. Love to have you back because there's I think so many things to talk about. But it was great meeting you, and I appreciate you coming here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.